gosh,
Morning, Miss Sonia.
morning, Miss Cheryl. I'm late for work.
I noticed the other day y'all had a big campaign with them police officers, so shutting down them people barbecue, wedding, dance. Man, how y'all expect these people to make money and survive?
Oh, Miss Cheryl, that is far from the truth. The EPA and the Guyana Police Force are actually working together to ensure that persons who conduct certain businesses and activities are authorized. We've tried to allow them to adhere to the noise regulations.
Well, this gotta be a new law. What law is this?
These laws were always in place. It's now that we're getting all these complaints at the agency, we are trying to enforce them. The Environmental Protection Act has been in place since 1996, and it states that persons and businesses must apply for environmental authorization before operating a sound-making device.
Well, girl, I never know this thing is prior to the law.
So if you're keeping a barbecue or an open-air function, like a wedding or a concert, especially in your community, right, and you're playing a music system, you have to apply for a short-term noise permit. And for persons that operate in a business and you got generators and stuff, you have to apply for a long-term permit. And that is applicable to bars and hotspots and clubs also.
Well, now that you explain it, I understand it. It's unfair to the elderly, sick people, and even them little children.
That is correct. According to the World Health Organization, loud noise can cause stress, sleep deprivation, and hearing impairment. And I'm sure you wouldn't want that.
Oh, now I understand. Thank you for explaining it, Miss Sonia.
For more information, you can contact the EPA at 225-5471 or visit our office at Ganges Street, North Sophia, Georgetown.
Come around, please.
Morning, my name is Deborah. I just want to get some information.
Good morning. I am Odessa Duncan, Senior Environmental Officer. How may I assist you today?
Tell me something. They got this man next door by me breaking on this big building, and it's bare asbestos in the roof. I could remember hearing on your TV program that asbestos is dangerous to human health and the environment.
This is correct. The Environmental Protection Act states that any person or facility that is storing, treating, transporting, and or disposing of hazardous waste material must be authorized by the EPA to do so.
Oh, but it's now I'm really hearing about this hazardous waste thing. Tell me something more.
Hazardous waste are waste material with properties that are dangerous or capable of having a harmful effect on human health and the environment, including things like paint, fertilizers, and pesticides, waste oil, and asbestos. These things have the potential to cause cancer, birth defects, kidney failure, and reproductive impairment, with children being at the highest risk. The environmental authorization in this case gives the legal right to transport, store, and dispose of this material in accordance with the EP Act Chapter 2005 Laws of Guyana. This ensures you and your operation and your process is safe for the environment and human health.
So you mean to tell me that all them leftover Christmas paint that I got on in my kitchen sink, I need authorization from EPA to get rid of it?
No, Miss Deborah. These items, once used for household purposes, does not require environmental authorization from the EPA. However, you should still take necessary steps to ensure that these materials are stored and disposed of in an environmentally safe manner.
Thank you so much for the information. I go in and tell him that he needs an environmental authorization. Thank you.
Are you involved in a business or thinking about starting one? Do you know there may be environmental impacts from business activities? According to the Environmental Protection Act of 1996, businesses such as gas stations, rice mills, large-scale agriculture and poultry farms, large-scale mining and forestry operations, hotels, and resorts must be authorized. Persons proposing any of these activities need to submit an application for environmental authorization to the EPA. Welcome to the Environment Matters, a monthly production of the Environmental Protection Agency Guyana, where we explore the work of the agency in its quest to fulfill its mandate of environmental protection and biodiversity conservation. I am Aretha Forde, an environmental officer attached to the communications department of the agency, and I'll be your hostess for this month's show. On May 22nd, the world will observe the International Day for Biological Diversity, or Biodiversity Day for short. In addition to this day, there are also a number of minor observances that are related to biodiversity, such as World Turtle Day and Migratory Bird Day. And these days are intended to really draw attention to issues related to biodiversity. It is important to note that we are also in the last year for the International Decade on Biodiversity as designated by the United Nations. So before we get into our discussion, I'd like to introduce my guests for this month's show. We have Senior Environmental Officer, Ms. Christine Samwaroo. And we also have another Senior Environmental Officer, Mr. Vidyanand Mohabir. And they're both attached to the MEAs unit of the EPA. Now, again, before we get into our discussion, Christine, I'd like for you to tell our guests about biodiversity. What exactly is biodiversity? Why is it important? And of course, we have to bring it home, so you can share a bit with us about biodiversity in Guyana.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Aretha. So when we're talking about biodiversity, we're talking about the vital foundation on which our lives depend on. So we depend on biodiversity for every facet of our well-being, whether it's food, clothing, shelter, we depend on it. In Guyana, we live in a unique place whereby 87% of our country is covered by forests. And we have recorded over 13,000 species that call Guyana home. Guyana is very unique. We're a part of the Guyana Shield. And because of where we're located, a number of species can only survive in Guyana. We're known as the land of many waters, but we're also known as the land of giants. Yes. So we know about we have the largest freshwater fish, the arapaima, the harpy eagle, the giant otter, just to name a few. They call Guyana home because, again, of our rich biodiversity.
Yeah, and I even remember I was very privileged, and I indeed call it a privilege, to visit the Kaieteur Falls. Wow. That's located in the Kaieteur National Park. And I got to see the golden rocket frog, which is just a speck. It looks like a speck on the leaf. And of course, we know that this animal can be found only in Guyana and only in that specific part of Guyana. Mm-hmm. So we call those endemic species. And those are those plants and animals that can only be found in a particular part of the world. And indeed, Guyana is very fortunate to have a lot of those endemic species. And I know when teams go out to do biological assessments, almost every time we find one or two species that are new to science.
Yes.
Right? So
if I could just add some more in
Yes.
biodiversity. So Christine gave a well captured definition of biodiversity here in Guyana. And also just to expand, she mentioned biodiversity is the foundation of our livelihoods, but also, if I may take that a bit further, what exactly does biodiversity mean? It's everything, plants, fishes, even bacteria and viruses. They're separated into three main categories. There's species diversity, which is the diversity of all the species. Mm-hmm. There's genetic diversity, which is the diversity of all the genes we have. And there's also ecosystem diversities. Just to give you an example of ecosystem diversity, this is like our marine ecosystem, our forestry, our forest ecosystem. So in Guyana, we know we have abundance of ecosystems here in Guyana. And to speak more on endemism, not only in the Kaieteur National Park, but also in the Northwest region, Region 1, there's a high endemism of fishes we have up there as well.
Yes, we indeed live in an amazing place that we are fortunate to call home. So Richie, let's continue our discussion. On May 22nd, again, we will celebrate Biodiversity Day. So just tell us a bit about what exactly is Biodiversity Day for those in our audience who would not have heard about this day before, and what is the theme for this year's celebration?
So International Biodiversity Day, as the name suggests, it's to bring awareness to biodiversity. We just learned of what biodiversity is, so it's just to bring awareness of what is biodiversity, why is it important, and why we need to conserve it. The theme for this year is solutions in nature. So it's straightforward. We know today in our world we face many issues, one of it being climate change, other social issues, and the theme solutions in nature suggests that the solutions, they exist and they are in nature, but it's some are known and some are yet to be discovered. So this year with that theme, it kind of pushes that for us to go find out what solutions exist and how we can utilize them and conserve them for survival, basically.
Yeah, just to add on, given our current realities with COVID-19, it just goes to show at the basis of our survival, we need the basic things like food, shelter, healthy environment. And the slogan for this year and the theme, our solutions are in nature, it just goes to show how important it is that we're working in alliance with our natural resources and we're not polluting it or harming it in any ways. The theme this year calls for solidarity across the sectors, and I think it's definitely like a hopeful statement, especially this being the ending of the decade on biodiversity. It's a reminder that we have to think about biodiversity, we have to think about nature when we're designing solutions.
Yes, and when you talked about designing solutions, I remember reading something very interesting on the internet, that the material that we call Velcro, the Velcro straps, that was actually mimicking a plant that's found in the wild. So indeed the solutions are in nature. We need look no further than possibly in our own backyards. And I remember for previous biodiversity days, the EPA would have conducted a number of activities to not only engage the general public, but specifically our youth.
Yeah.
And I was really happy to be a part of some of those activities that we would have had. We would have conducted an art competition for grade 6 students. So we went into the schools, we would have shared basically the same information you're sharing now, tell them about biodiversity, why it's important, biodiversity in Guyana, what we can do to protect and conserve, which we will hear about a bit later in the show. And that art competition was very well received over the years. And then we would have graduated to the high school students, where we held, at one point we had a national youth conference on biodiversity. So that was really to engage the older children, have them go out and do the studies, and then come and present to each other through various art forms. So indeed, the solutions are in nature, and of course we must look to the younger generation coming up to help us find some of those solutions.
Yeah, one of the things I really like about Biodiversity Day, it's a way for us to celebrate the voices that are working towards promoting biodiversity. Like, for example, our indigenous communities, women, youths, they play a really important role. And when we're thinking about biodiversity solutions, we really have to involve their perspectives.
Yes, definitely. And we need to hear from all stakeholders when it comes to Guyana's biodiversity. Our audience would have heard MEAs, and they're probably wondering, what are MEAs? So could you expand a bit for us, please? Tell us what are MEAs, what are some of those that Guyana would have signed on to, and what is EPA's role in MEAs?
Yeah, so MEAs, the abbreviation stands for Multilateral Environmental Agreements, and these are global agreements that focuses on environmental sustainability and promote the environmental agenda. So these are international global agreements to keep countries accountable. So all countries are working towards biodiversity conservation, climate change, etc. So at the EPA, we are the focal point for the UN CBD. So that's the UN Convention on Biological Diversity.
So just to continue from Christine, the UNCBD, Guyana signed on to this convention in 1992. There are two protocols under this convention. There is the Biosafety Protocol, which is known as the Cartagena Protocol, and there's also the Nagoya Protocol. The Nagoya Protocol speaks to access and benefit sharing, or ABS. This relates to our genetic resources and access to it, and the benefits that are derived from it, how are they shared, and if they're shared equitably, or to ensure that they're equitably shared. The Biodiversity Protocol, it is related to GMOs, or genetically modified organisms, and LMOs, living modified organisms. So it's to safeguard our biodiversity in that these species, they're modified, and we don't want it to go into the environment and kind of wreak havoc on our natural environment. So it's there to ensure that this doesn't happen, with ensuring that there are precautions taken and measures are in place.
Have you ever heard of biodiversity? Biodiversity is a short way of saying biological diversity and is the variety of life on Earth. Think of biodiversity as a web of life in which humans, animals, plants, and microorganisms rely on each other. Biodiversity is usually explored at three levels: genes, species, and ecosystems. Each individual species has genes, which are the source of its different features. For instance, each person has a different face and body because of the uniqueness in our genes. Biodiversity is also present in different species, that is, the variety of living things which can reproduce. On our way to work, school, or the store each day, we see different species of animals, like horses, cows, insects, and trees like hibiscus, pawpaw, or mango. These varieties of species live in many different types of habitats, including forests, mountains, savannas, rivers, or wetlands. Therefore, biodiversity is all around us. According to the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, Guyana's country profile has about 8,000 species of plants and 1,815 known species of fishes, amphibians, birds, reptiles, and mammals. Did you know that failure to manage the practices of our agricultural, gold, diamond, and bauxite industries can cause harmful chemicals to seep into groundwater and or make their way into rivers and lakes used by neighboring communities? Our industrial waste is another pollutant that poses a threat to biodiversity, since the act of dumping the waste can pollute our rivers and other water bodies by the release of harmful chemicals. Also, overharvesting of fishes, animals, medicinal plants, overlogging, and overgrazing animals on the land poses serious threats to biodiversity, since it means that we are using these resources faster than they can be replaced or reproduced. If we want to protect our country's biodiversity, we need to understand that humans rely on plants, animals, and all other living things as much as they rely on us. In fact, Guyana's biodiversity is considered mostly intact, but if we are not careful, our environments can be destroyed. For instance, this stack of blocks, with each block representing a plant, animal, human, microorganism, or fungi, are stacked to represent our environments. Let's say we remove one block. There isn't a major shift in the whole structure, but if more and more blocks are removed, meaning animals go extinct or plants die, the greater the impact will be on our structure. How can we protect our country's biodiversity? At the national level, Guyana signed on to the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity in 1992, which was ratified in 1994. You may ask, what is the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity? A convention is an agreement on the environment between more than two countries. Such an agreement guides global, regional, and national action on environmental issues. Therefore, the UNCBD is an agreement between more than two countries on biodiversity, and it guides global, regional, and our national action on biodiversity. Since signing the convention, the national focal point, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, has worked towards the protection and sustainable use of biodiversity. You may ask, what is a focal point? A focal point is an agency which is responsible for coordinating implementation of a convention at the national level. The EPA has implemented a national biodiversity strategy and action plan, the mainstreaming of biodiversity, and is continually working to achieve the MEA. The work of EPA is complemented by organizations such as the Protected Areas Commission, Iwokrama International Center for Rainforest Conservation and Development, World Wildlife Fund Guyana Country Office, Conservation International Guyana, and the Guyana Marine Conservation Society, to name a few. Here are ways you can help to protect Guyana's biodiversity. Become an advocate for biodiversity. Plant trees instead of concreting your yard. Form a group to clean up a beach, drain, or trench, or streets in your community. To learn more about how you can protect Guyana's biodiversity, call or visit the Environmental Protection Agency.
A message from the Ministry of the Presidency, Department of Environment, Global Environment Facility, and the United Nations Development Programme.
Gosh, morning, Miss Cheryl. I'm late for work.
I noticed the other day y'all had a big campaign with them police officers, so shutting down them people barbecue, wedding, dance. Man, how y'all expect these people to make money and survive?
Oh, Miss Cheryl, that is far from the truth. The EPA and the Guyana Police Force are actually working together to ensure that persons who conduct certain businesses and activities are authorized. We've tried to allow them to adhere to the noise regulations.
Well, this gonna be a new law. What law is this?
These laws were always in place. It's now that we're getting all these complaints at the agency, we are trying to enforce them. The Environmental Protection Act has been in place since 1996, and it states that persons and businesses must apply for environmental authorization before operating a sound-making device.
Well, girl, I never know this thing is prior to the law.
So if you're keeping a barbecue or an open-air function, like a wedding or a concert, especially in your community, right, and you're playing a music system, you have to apply for a short-term noise permit. And for persons that operate in a business and you got generators and stuff, you have to apply for a long-term permit. And that is applicable to bars and hotspots and clubs also.
Well, now that you explain it, I understand it. It's unfair to the elderly, sick people, and even them little children.
That is correct. According to the World Health Organization, loud noise can cause stress, sleep deprivation, and hearing impairment. And I'm sure you wouldn't want that.
Oh, now I understand. Thank you for explaining it, Miss Sonia.
For more information, you can contact the EPA at 225-5471 or visit our office at Ganges Street, North Sophia, Georgetown.
At the Environmental Protection Agency, we believe that the environment is everybody's business. We can start caring for our planet by becoming more environmentally friendly in our everyday actions. Here's what you can do. Dispose of waste in a garbage bin. Clean our drains, yards, and carpets regularly. Take a reusable shopping bag to the market. Support local butchers and farmers to reduce packaged waste. Plant a kitchen garden, trees and flowers. Compost your organic waste. Conserve water and electricity. Carry a reusable water bottle. These little acts are good for your health and that of the environment. Remember, healthy people work better and achieve more, and together, small actions make a big difference. For further information on how you can help, please contact the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, Ganges Street, Sophia, or telephone us at 225-5467. You can also visit our website, epaghana.org, or our Facebook and Instagram pages.
Come around, please.
Morning. My name is Deborah. I just want to get some information.
Good morning. I am Odessa Duncan, Senior Environmental Officer. How may I assist you today?
Tell me something. They got this man next door by me breaking on this big building, and it's bare asbestos in the roof. I could remember hearing on your TV program that asbestos is dangerous to human health and the environment.
This is correct. The Environmental Protection Act states that any person or facility that is storing, treating, transporting, and or disposing of hazardous waste material must be authorized by the EPA to do so.
Oh, but it's now I'm really hearing about this hazardous waste thing. Tell me something more.
Hazardous waste are waste material with properties that are dangerous or capable of having a harmful effect on human health and the environment, including things like paint, fertilizers, and pesticides, waste oil, and asbestos. These things have the potential to cause cancer, birth defects, kidney failure, and reproductive impairment, with children being at the highest risk. The environmental authorization in this case gives the legal right to transport, store, and dispose of this material in accordance with the EPA Act Chapter 2005 Laws of Guyana. Now, this ensures you and your operation and your process is safe for the environment and human health.
So you mean to tell me that all them leftover Christmas paint that I got on in my kitchen sink, I need authorization from EPA to get rid of it?
No, Miss Deborah. These items, once used for household purposes, does not require environmental authorization from the EPA. However, you should still take necessary steps to ensure that these materials are stored and disposed of in an environmentally safe manner.
Thank you so much for the information. I go in and tell him that he needs an environmental authorization. Thank you.
So Christine, I want to touch a bit on something that you would have mentioned earlier about the MEAs being like a global alliance, right? Mm-hmm. And I'd just like for you to share with us some of the partners that EPA works with in order to ensure that Guyana fulfills its obligations under these various MEAs.
Yeah, so we recognize that it's important for us to work along with other groups to carry out our mandate, because a lot of times our mission are aligned and we have a similar mission that we want to accomplish, so we work together. So the EPA has a number of local partners, regional and also international. On the local level, we work closely with PAC, which is the Protected Areas Commission, the Department of Environment, and the Guyana Forestry Commission. We also work with a number of NGOs to carry out projects such as the World Wildlife Fund and Conservation International. we've worked on a number of projects with the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN, as well as UNDP. And not forgetting the local groups that are here in Guyana, like the youth groups, the women groups, indigenous groups that are pushing the agenda to protect biodiversity.
Yes, and of course that's not to exclude some of our other partners like the Center for the Studies of Biological Diversity, that's at the University of Guyana, the Guyana Marine Conservation Society. That looks at their work is mainly based on the sea turtles and ensuring their protection and conservation, and of course the National Two Shells Council, because a lot of our work is done in those indigenous communities, and of course all our other stakeholders, the community-based organizations and so on. All right, so we are in the final year for the UN decade on biodiversity, and over those past 10 years EPA Guyana and our stakeholders would have done quite a bit of work when it comes to biodiversity conservation and protection. So we'd like to hear a bit more about what are some of those key projects and policies that would have been developed over the past 10 years and even before that, because significant work would have done before the decade would have been announced.
Yeah, so definitely 2020 is definitely a year of significance, and it helps us reflect back on all that we have accomplished and looking ahead on what the new direction is when it comes to biodiversity and conservation. So in the last 10 years, we've accomplished a lot, and just to name a few, we have expanded our protected areas to include the Kunuku Mountains and the Shell Beach protected area. And those areas are significant because, like we mentioned in the beginning, the endemic species that resides there and calls those areas home. Like, for example, at Shell Beach, we have 4 turtles that nest there. So it's really important that we protect those areas. But significantly, the Protected Areas Commission, they've been doing a really good job of working with the communities and getting them involved in the protection of these species and helping them carry out their livelihood within that area as well.
I know that Guyana has had a very long and proud history when it comes to biodiversity, conservation, and protection, going all the way back to 1929 when the Kaieteur National Park was established. And even the environment is enshrined in our constitution. There is a part that says that every citizen is guaranteed the right to a clean and healthy environment, and we're also to lend our voice to environmental protection. So we're even, ensuring that at the highest level of decision making, that biodiversity protection is a right of each and every Guyanese. And then we can jump a bit in time in the 1980s when the Iwokrama Center for Rainforest Conservation and Development was established and research was established. We can go a bit further in 1996 when the Environmental Protection Act was passed, which established the EPA as we know it today. We can even go a bit further into some of the work that we would have done over the past decade. So Richie, I'll allow you to share some of that.
Thank you, Aretha. You rightly mentioned the decade of biodiversity, which run from 2011 to 2020. It also aligns with the UNCBD, our Focal Convention Strategic Plan for Biodiversity. So this year, 2020, we're kind of like looking back all of what we have accomplished, the lessons learned, and how we can move forward. For Guyana specifically, from during that decade, we were able to do a lot. First, with the passage of the Protected Areas Act and setting up the commission, which now allows us to establish national parks. Currently, around 8.7 of our land mass is under some form of protection. And from 2011, we went to the establishment of the Wildlife Conservation Management Commission, which happened in 2016. So a lot of work has been done as it relates legislatively. So to speak more on like the achievements because of the PAC. The PAC was able, the Protected Areas Commission was able to do something novel and unique in our region, in that they were able to combine the Conishan Protected Area, Conishan Conservation Area, and kind of convert it into a protected area. Even though it remains Amerindian Village, they were able to incorporate this too. So this was a big achievement for us here, because other countries can learn from us and we were able to replicate that even further, because there's tons of other Amerindian villages that we can replicate this process in an effort to increase our protected areas. The EPA, we were able to pass legislation on the biosafety. I mentioned the biosafety protocol earlier.
Yes.
So we have a bill on biosafety and biosecurity. There's also 4 sets of regulations. And for the Nagoya Protocol, we were able to establish NBRIS. I know it's a lot of acronyms and abbreviations,
Yes,
but bear
indeed.
with me. NBRIS stands for the National Biodiversity Research Information System. So this allows researchers to make application for biodiversity permit. So it's kind of a fancy in a sense that there's no more paperwork. You go online, you sign up, everything is done online. So that
Great.
was a big achievement for us.
Yeah, and this is important as we move further into the digital age.
Yeah, exactly, and the paperless, if I say.
Yes.
And also regulations. We started regulations a while now for the access and benefit sharing protocol, or the Nagoya protocol, but right now we have a finalized draft which we're looking to take forward. So between 2010 to 2020, major achievements, there have been a lot, but we also recognize more could have been done. So learning from our mistakes, we're looking to integrate that into our next approach, into the next biodiversity framework. Like I mentioned, this is the end of this strategic framework, so we're now looking to develop this post-2020 framework with all the lessons learned, how we can improve on implementation of this convention.
Yeah, and before we get into the post-2020 framework, it would be remiss of me not to mention the overarching guiding document for our country's development in the next 40 years, and that is the GSDS Vision 2040, Ghana's Green State Development Strategy, which actually we had the low carbon development strategy, and so our policymakers decided to build on that sector-specific strategy and have something that looks at our overall development, whether it's economic, social, and of course environment is heavily included, because it recognizes that the basis for sustainable development, of course, is to have a clean and healthy environment. So let's talk a bit about the post-2020 agenda.
Yes, so 2020 is a very, very important year for biodiversity, and the last decade, it was a decade on biodiversity, but this year we're working under the theme of living in harmony with nature, and that relates back to the theme for this year's International Biodiversity Day. So this year is really significant because we're approaching the new decade on biodiversity conservation, and we're working under the theme of living in harmony with nature, and that relates back to the theme of this year's International Day of Biodiversity. So it's a call to us, to all the sectors, to wake up and act, and we have to do so quickly, because we see reports after reports noting that species are going extinct at an alarming and fast rate, because a lot of times it's related back to human activity and anthropogenic causes. So the post-2020 agenda that we're working to finalize, it's calling for all the sectors to be involved, to step up, to act, whether it's financial institution, businesses, academia. They're all important in us crafting this framework. And we're also looking for voices from marginalized groups such as indigenous people, youths, women, to be involved, because they offer a unique perspective. So far, Guyana has been invited and has taken part in two working group meetings, 2 international working group meetings. And at those meetings, we're trying to finalize the framework. And at the end of this year, at the Conference of Parties, where all the countries are going to come together, we'll see a document that will be guiding us for the next decade. And as I mentioned before, this document is definitely bold, and it's asking for countries to step up and think about biodiversity and align biodiversity with development.
So if I could also add some more to this new document, it's a new document. It builds on the previous plan, but this document has to be different because for far too long, the progress on biodiversity and its conservation has been lacking or slowful. So what this document requires countries and parties is to be more ambitious. I mean, there are even calls for dedicating or committing 1% of each country's GDP to ensure that biodiversity is conserved. So you see the type of change that is required for to keep our biodiversity, because how important it is. It's linked to our survival. Without biodiversity, there is no survival. So people have to understand the importance of it. I mean, everywhere you look, you see the environment. It's here, there, but you could play your part in it. And this document, the post-2020 framework, it's radically different from previous frameworks.
Yeah, Richie, you know, a saying came to mind, one of my old lecturers, when you talked about having countries commit 1% of their gross domestic product, their earnings, towards biodiversity. It says that conservation without money is conversation, and we definitely need to move away from just talking about biodiversity and really, in essential, putting our money where our mouth is.
Exactly.
And of course, yeah, well, we can be assured that Guyana will step up to the plate when it comes to these types of commitments, because we have so much in our country, land of the giants, a high endemism level, and so on.
Yeah. And just to add on too, as a small island development state, it's important for us to get the support from international partners, and within the framework there is a push for small countries like us. We have a lot to offer, but we do need the support. We need political will, but we also need the international support. So within that document, there's a framework for that.
All right. So as we're coming down to close on our program, we'd like to share with viewers what they can do to participate in Biodiversity Day celebrations or observations, because we know because of COVID-19 we are somewhat limited in what we can do, but that doesn't mean that we can't do anything. So guys, I'd like you to share with our audience what are some of the things that they can do at home, and even as they go out to work, what can they do at the office to help protect and conserve biodiversity?
Yes, as you mentioned, Biodiversity Day is celebrated on May 22nd,
Yes.
but every day we can appreciate biodiversity. And at the EPA, we believe that the environment is everybody's business. And in Guyana, we're lucky. Like, usually we have a little yard space or something.
Yes.
So when you're thinking about Biodiversity Day and things that you can do, it's the simple things. Well, first, just go out and be a part of nature. Appreciate what's around you, even if it's just in your backyard. There's also, you can cook vegetarian meals every once in a while. There's a push right now, especially with the COVID situation, to start a little kitchen garden, and maybe you can plant native species of flowers so you can attract pollinators such as bees and butterflies and things like that. At the EPA, we have a number of public consultation whenever there is a development happening, and I encourage persons to come out and share their opinions, ask questions, because again, we all live in Guyana, we all have a role to play, and each and every citizen have, if they have questions, they can come and get those clarified at those meetings.
Yes, definitely.
I can also add, there's a lot you can do. You can form community groups. Simple things like keep the environment clean, or a wildlife club within the community. I mean, for most of us, the first thing we would do if we see a snake is to go and kill it. But it's our biodiversity, they form our ecosystem, and from those ecosystem we have ecosystem services. So just don't going out and killing any wildlife you see. There are ways where you can manage it, or even call agencies to help or assist you with those. You also mentioned how we were faced with COVID-19.
Right.
I kind of like see the link, or kind of show you the link, that the theme is our solutions are in nature. There might be a cure potentially with some plant or something that could help in the instance with COVID-19. So you can see why we need to ensure that these our biodiversity are protected, because there's so much things that exists out there which we haven't discovered as yet, and which could even help us in this pandemic and future pandemics to come.
Yeah, just
Let's hope there are none of those though.
yes, we encourage citizens to continue to educate themselves on biodiversity, and especially with species extinction. It's happening at an alarming rate, and it's important for us to keep our eye out on what's happening on the biodiversity front. And for developers, I encourage them to, when they're developing projects, again, it's important for them to get women involved, youths involved, indigenous people, listen
Yes,
to their
definitely.
perspectives.
All right, so in closing, I'd like for you to share with us, with so much that has been done, especially on the legislative front, what is in the pipelines for the agency moving forward?
So a number of projects the agency is currently working on, but because of COVID, we have started working on a virtual platform. The CLME, or the North Brazil Large Marine Ecosystem Project, it's happening. It's a regional project between Brazil, Trinidad, Guyana, Suriname, and that project is looking at ecosystem-based solution. And we have identified a site in Berbice whereby we're trying to restore the mangrove population in that area. And a significant part of that project is getting the community members involved and assisting them in building their capacity to take ownership of the projects.
There's also the ASL project, the Amazon Sustainable Landscapes project. It is also a GEF project, the Global Environment Facility project, that seeks to establish landscapes within Guyana, more specifically a sustainable landscape where you could have your extractive industries like forestry and mining done in a sustainable way, and also a conservation area, which is strictly for conservation. So those projects are in the pipeline. We're currently executing those projects.
Yes, we've also established the Coastal Marine Management Committee, and that's a committee with all the organizations in Guyana that have a mandate on protection of our coasts. So it's significant because we have all these groups coming together and we're working strategically on better management of our coastline. In addition, because we're entering into this new decade of biodiversity, we will be working on establishing and looking back at our NBSAT and working with the partners to ensure that we're coming up with a document that's meaningful and that's also working in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals as well as Guyana's green pathway.
All right, so that brings us almost to the end of our show. Thank you very much for being here and sharing with our audience what the EPA has been doing, what Guyana has been doing to protect and conserve its national patrimony. And we look forward to hearing from you again about the work that you've been doing with the EPA. So as we bring our program to a close, I'd just like to remind you that you can follow the agency on its social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can pick up a copy of Sunday's Chronicle or the Guyana Times for our weekly articles. Tune into NCN's Guyana Today show for our bi-weekly interviews, and we also have radio interviews that are done on 102.5 FM. And of course, in the spirit of celebrating Biodiversity Day from home, we will be launching our video competition very shortly, so stay tuned for that update. And before I leave you, I must remind you that come 2021, we're not sure of the month yet, but Guyana will be implementing a ban on single-use plastics. We have a virtual consultation, so you're invited to visit our social media platforms, follow that link, ensure that you fill the questionnaire, ensure that you hashtag make the switch to those alternative materials, and just get yourself ready for what is to come. Thank you very much for tuning in, and see you again.
From the gift of Iwakrama to the groundbreaking low-carbon development strategy, Guyana, the land of many waters, land of the giants, has been a leader on environmental management and biodiversity conservation in the Caribbean and on the world stage. Guyana is now embarking on a bold new path that places environment at the center of its development. Our country's Green State Development Strategy is our country's long-term development plan that seeks to reorient and diversify Guyana's economy, reducing reliance on traditional sectors and opening up new sustainable income and investment opportunities. The GSDS will provide the foundation for an inclusive green economy, which will result in improved human well-being and social equity while reducing environmental risks. In 2016, a bold move was made to ban styrofoam food containers through legislation and enforcement. We joined the rest of the world in beating plastic pollution for World Environment Day and beyond.
At the Environmental Protection Agency, we believe that the environment is everybody's business. We can start caring for our planet by becoming more environmentally friendly in our everyday actions. Here's what you can do. Dispose of waste in a garbage bin. Clean our drains, yards, and carpets regularly. Take a reusable shopping bag to the market. Support local butchers and farmers to reduce packaged waste. Plant a kitchen garden, trees and flowers. Compost your organic waste. Conserve water and electricity. Carry a reusable water bottle. These little acts are good for your health and that of the environment. Remember, healthy people work better and achieve more, and together, small actions make a big difference. For further information on how you can help, please contact the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, Ganges Street, Sophia, or telephone us at 225-5467. You can also visit our website, epagana.org, or our Facebook and Instagram pages.